Hey module makers, welcome back to our Dev Deep Dive series. In part 1, we explored the philosophy behind the sound of Modulus, how we aim for something rhythmic, informative and as zen as possible. If you haven't checked that one out yet, I definitely recommend starting there. Today, we're zooming in. In this part, we're breaking down how operator sounds are actually implemented, how a single machine goes from concept to in-game audio, and how those individual sounds layer together to create the wider rhythm of your factory. From the subtle ticks to full production flow, this is where the clockwork really comes to life. Let's get into it.
Can you walk us through how a single operator gets its sound? So let's just pick whichever one you want. I don't care what it is, but given one, how did you come up with the sound for that particular one?
Right, so the usual process, if anything is moving in game already, then I will have a capture. I will either get it from somebody or make it myself and look at what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I throw that into my digital audio software. And normally I start messing around and I try to create something really quickly, because what really often happens is that I make something that fits nicely when it's alone on my screen, but when it's in game, it definitely always needs to be tweaked. Mm-hmm. But sometimes even when it's like a really nice sound, it becomes obvious in game that it's not working. So it's better to get something into the game quickly and then iterate than like fiddle around with some sound for ages and then learn later on that it's totally not a good fit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I try to look at what's the operator doing, like what's happening. We have like different things going on. Like we have some operators that are like mixing colors, like liquids. You see liquids. Do you see them?
Yeah, sloshing around in there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's like the cutter that cuts stuff, and the stamper. And so I try to convey that as well. Although, like as I said, I toned it down along the journey. So yeah, it's basically like thinking like what's moving in the operator, what is it doing? Yeah, and then try to somehow create a cohesive sound for the operator. And then I was going to say obviously, but maybe it's not obvious to other people. Things usually need like variations. Like if you have like the exact same sound all over again, it's going to make people like really angry quickly. At least myself. Really sensitive to that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's often it's like making one sound and then see if it kind of works and then iterate on it and make variations, and then when that's done, there's the other fiddle work that's like dealing with how everything works in the 3D game world. Like
right, yeah.
The operators are like 3D sound sources, so they have like a sound size in game, so you hear them when you're at a specific distance, but when you zoom out more you don't hear them anymore. And that's also a lot of tweaking that can only happen when there's something in game.
Yeah, I imagine that being really complicated. I know nothing about the technical side of it, but the way that you come up with like an individual sound for an operator, like when you're in the operator, and then having like 20 of those nearby each other and having to have all those sounds go at once, I imagine that's quite complicated. Or is it more simple than I think?
I wouldn't say it's complicated in a technical way so much, but it's a lot of fiddling, because it's not that easy to get to the sweet spot where everything's working nicely most of the time.
Yeah.
There's some aspects that you wouldn't expect usually. For example, what you usually do in games is you have what you would consider the microphone in game also on the camera, right? Because that's where you are and you're looking at the thing. And that makes sense for first person, and it makes sense for third person a lot as well if you're pretty close. But where for us what we went with, and I think that was important, is because you can angle your camera downwards, especially you could do this a lot more back in the day. Like now it's been kind of nerfed a little bit for performance reasons. But because of that, you could be really close to something that's below you, but that's not what you're looking at. You're looking at something that's usually center screen.
Right, yeah.
And so sometimes you want that sound. It's almost like, think of it like a boom guy in film, right? Where someone's holding this long, the fishing rod with the mic at the end and holding it just above the actor. So you're really getting sound from on top of the scene. And that's what we're doing. We have this thing where the mic is always centered. The camera always looks at a specific spot on, like there's an invisible point on the ground, and that's where the microphone is also centered, but it goes straight up as you zoom out. So even if you zoom out really, really horizontally, right, at a shallow angle, you'll get the sound from higher above the point. So we take the distance of the camera to this point, but we only let it go upwards, which works great because there's this advantage in factory games where at a certain point there's just stuff on the screen and you as the player do not know exactly where the sounds come from.
Yeah.
That lets you hide a lot of mistakes, right? The other side of this whole equation is then you don't get to just play a sound randomly for all the 5,000 things that are on screen, because that would A, sound insane, and B, not work performance-wise. So you also have to then fight about this problem. So there's these two things that let you mask some stuff, and then they also let you not do as much as you would like to do. In other video games, you can usually just put a sound source on the thing and just say you play, and if there's too many, you just kind of stop playing the last end of it.
Yeah.
You don't get that here. But it makes it extra difficult, I find, but that's Almut's job, to make sure that if you look at an individual thing placed by itself in the middle of nowhere, it does the correct sound and it does it right. But then if it's in the middle of everything, you also get the right experience. That isn't just, playing it 10 times or even more.
Yeah.
There's some magic involved and some technical magic involved to make sure it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have this this separate layer of, let's say, general factory noise, and the more buildings and operators we have on screen, the more this layer blends in.
Right.
So when there's just one operator on screen, we don't hear the layer at all, so we just hear the singular sound of the operator. But if there's like a lot of things going on, we kind of
layer it in, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We kind of try to find a good average of what's on screen. Like I think I made a Discord post about this a while ago. I can go find it. It's about having these 3 tracks. About, I think one's general, one is specifically for conveyors, because that makes sense. You kind of recognize the sound of like stuff moving. And then one is just nature, I think, right? Or birds or something. And those are generally true, but they're on a very bad resolution. Like in terms of, like an island will have, like a small island will only have a few points where that is evaluated, but we can't do it per tile. It just doesn't work. And then again, you kind of hope that it works out, and there's some edge cases where it's worse. But in general, I don't think anyone's ever noticed that our ambient sound, now breaking this glass for everyone, nobody's so far complained that the ambient sound is actually somewhat kind of lying to you in terms of what it thinks is on the screen. But we can always tweak it. We have some, that's a nice thing. We always have some leeway to go more direct, show more exactly what's on screen, or like even take it even more. And then in some situations it's better, in some it's worse.
I think if anything, people really like that mix, because I obviously I talk to the community quite a lot, and I've had quite a few comments about how they really like the sort of little nature sounds that they can hear in the background, because that really brings in that Zen feeling, right? It's not just the rhythmic factory, it's also that nature, and there's just enough of it that it makes it relaxing without it being overpowering. And I think you guys managed to get that mix just right from the feedback that I've heard. So I think breaking the fourth wall and everything, I think doesn't matter, because I think you've nailed it. I think it's a really relaxing feeling, and I personally love the little nature sounds. I think they're just, it really adds to it. It goes really well with the little touches that Antoine has made in terms of like nature and beauty and little things that he's added to make it modulus, not just a factory, but our factory. It all blends.
It works great until we add the next set of, sounds, and then we go through that entire process all over again.
Yeah.
Balance. But that's good to hear. That right now it's in a good spot. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think so. People really like it.
And that's a closer look at how operator sounds are built and layered into the living, breathing rhythm of your factory. From individual clicks and movements to the full soundscape of a working production line, it's all about subtlety, timing, and making sure the factory feels alive without ever overwhelming you. Don't forget, if you missed part 1, make sure you go back and check it out. We dive into the philosophy behind the whole audio and how we shaped the overall tone of Modulus. And if you're curious how this all feels in motion, you can try the updated demo right now as part of Next Fest. Thanks for joining another deep dive. We'll catch you in the next one, and as always, see you on the factory floor.